Hi everyone, today's video we are going to be talking about basic knowledge of prose. This video will be divided into 4 parts which related to course objectives. First, we'll deal with the basic knowledge of prose, which is definition. The next 3 parts will talk a lot about the 4 kinds of prose, which are non-fictional, fictional and heroic prose, and the last is prose poetry. Before we start the session, I'd like to remind you to prepare your writing tools, a piece of paper maybe, and a pen. However, it's okay if you want to go paperless. You can replay the video and move back or forward as you like. Well, without further ado, let's dive in. First, let's define what prose is. Prose simply means language that follows the natural patterns found in everyday speech. The term itself comes from the Latin prosa oratio, which means straightforward. It uses everyday language and follows a basic grammatical structure like words and phrases, which arrange into sentences and paragraphs. To make it clear, let's see the difference between prose and poetry. So, prose stands out from works of poetry which follow a metrical structure like rhythm and rhyme. Prose is much like a person speak. It makes no attempt to rhyme a line to line, and it doesn't have a rigid rhythm. Its difference with poetry, which may have more aesthetic appeal, such as figurative language, or the form, which consists of lines and stanzas. Normal everyday speech is spoken in prose, and most people think and write in prose. Look at this example. The following excerpt is from Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. So it is an excellent example of poetry. Let me read for you. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The rhyming words at the end of each line, which are deep, keep, and sleep, should show us right away that this is written in a traditional poetic form. So the poem also has rhythm. Check out the last 2 lines here. Miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep. They repeat. You wouldn't ordinarily find such exact repetition in prose. If this poem, for example, was written in a prose, it would be something different. It would sound something like this. I look around at the woods and they are lovely, dark and deep. I know I have places I need to be and promises I need to keep. But if I could, I would stay here a little while longer and enjoy the darkness and the trees. As you can see here, there are no rhyming lines and no real rhythm, just normal conversational prose. Now that you have a firm grasp on what prose is, let's take a closer look at the four main types of literary prose. Nonfiction is the first kind of literary prose. Nonfiction is a broad genre of writing that encompasses all books that are not rooted on a fictional narrative. So nonfiction writing can be based on history or biography. It can be instructional, it can offer commentary and humor, it can ponder philosophical questions as well. So if a book is not rooted in a made-up story, then it is a nonfiction. Here are some of the most prominent types of non-fictional prose. First are biographies, autobiographies, and memoirs. These subsets of non-fiction focus on the life story of a particular subject. Biographies first. Biographies are written usually in a third person about someone other than the author of the book. while autobiographies and memoirs are written by the subject themselves and by necessity written by someone who is currently alive at the time of the writing. Biographies may profile subjects both living and dead. In biography, the writer is trying to teach or document something that happened in real life, and they use conversational prose to do this. Here I have an example. This is an example from Ron Chernow's biography on Ulysses S. Grant. We see an example of this kind of prose here. Grant would not be easily discouraged and scheduled a follow-up attack from 10 a.m. on May 22nd. As always, he believed delay would allow the other side to boost its defenses and absorb reinforcement. So, as you can see here, Chernow is writing based on historical facts. He used letters, records from that time to inform his writing. So in here, the first sentence, we can see that Grant would not be easily discouraged. Here, the author is making an assumption about Grant's attitude and emotion at this time. But he is doing so based on historical evidence he has on hand. Therefore, although nonfiction prose may at times contain slight fictional elements, in general, this piece has revealed real-world information. Okay, so next is history. Historical nonfiction consists of true accounts of historical eras or even historical events. Some history dwell purely in objective facts, and other history are reflected through the lens of the author's personal beliefs. Okay, so the third is travel guides and travelogues. Let's start from the travelogues. Travelogues are, let's say, a close cousin of memoirs. They recount the author's specific experience traveling somewhere, while travel guides tend to be more instructive, offering suggestion and practical information for traveling to go or to visit to a particular destination. Next is academic texts. Academic texts are designed to instruct reader on particular topics. So most of us first encounter academic books in the form of assigned school textbook. Academic texts are also used by adults when they want to learn a particular subject, such as trade or repair or music arranging. Next is philosophy and insights. These books are a close cousin to academic texts, and many of them are published by university-affiliated publishing houses. This genre runs the tradition from traditional philosophy such as Aristotle, Descartes, to modern and scientific theories such as Newton, Nietzsche, to analyze scientific or cultural phenomenon. Okay, now we come to self-help and motivation. Self-help books are some of the best-selling books, the best-selling non-fictional books in the world of non-fictional prose. Many of these books concern on business success, boosting confidence, staying organized, relationship advice, maybe dieting, and also financial management. Next type is journalism. So journalism is a broad subgenre of nonfiction and one that encompasses many media. It can be visual media, it can also be written media. So journalism is most regularly consumed in the form of newspapers and also magazines, along with monthly journals and also deep reports. The last is guides and how-to manuals related to the self-help subgenre, but it is more focused on specific skills and such as cookbooks, musical notation, athletic instruction maybe, and also tutorial for home hobbyists. The second type of prose is fictional prose. Fictional prose, that is a literary work that partly or wholly imagined by the author of the book. Some of the greatest literary works of all the time, a lot of them were written in fictional prose. Let's see, like Les Miserables, Dear Life, A Lord of the Rings, and countless more. Fiction can sometimes be based on truth, but the events and the conversation are made up, and for the most part, it is imagined by the author. And here are some examples of fictional prose. Those are novel, a short story, or maybe tales. Let's move on to the third type of literary prose, which is heroic prose. Heroic prose is common in many legends and tall tales and may be written down or recited out loud. Think about the legend of King Arthur. Tales about the knights and the round table have been around for a very long time. They were retold in ancient Britain and are likely based on a legendary British leader who, according to medieval histories, or in the late 5th and early 6th centuries, defended against Saxon invaders. So for a long time, the tales were passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth. And the story itself has changed over time. And when someone finally wrote them down, these legends appear in heroic prose. The final form of prose is called prose poetry. Okay, remember, prose contains narrative and doesn't follow a set of rhythm, while poetry is a rhythmic and oftentimes imagery-based. Prose poetry simply combines these two elements into a single piece of writing. It is poetry that is not written in verse and contains other poetical attributes such as rhythm and metaphors. Let's take a look at prose poem written by Charles Baudelaire titled Be Drunk. Okay, I'm going to read it for you. You have to be always drunk. That's all. That is it to it. It's the only way. So, as not to feel the horrible burden of time that breaks your backs and bends you to the earth, you have to be continually drunk. But on what? Wine, poetry, or feed too, as you wish. But be drunk. This is clearly prose, as you can see here. There is no rhyming or specific rhythm in this piece. Still, look at the vibrancy of the imagery. Baudelaire begins with a startling thought, and then with a few sentences you learn he's not necessarily talking about alcohol at all. He's calling people to not waste the time that they have to and to be fully devoted to whatever hold their passion. To do this, the author uses metaphors, imagery, and literary allusion. It is poetic, even though it is written in the form of prose. So what is prose poetry? It is poetry written in a prose form. Now we come to the end of this video. It is summary part. So in short, we can say that prose comes mainly in the form of non-fictional, fictional, heroic, and poetic prose. Understanding the nuances of each of these can help to widen your own experience and further appreciate what you are reading. So that's it. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check your e-learning for today's assignment. And as always, happy studying.